Morning, everyone. Hey, John Mark. Hey, Dr. Baliwas. Nice to see you guys.
How's it going?
Hey, Maddie.
Hey. I'm excited to be here. We have quite a few people logged in right now to the webinar. I'm super excited. Good morning, everyone. I want to welcome you to our Doing Business in the New Normal series. Thanks for being here. Thank you to John Mark. Thank you to Dr. Baliwas. A few housekeeping items before I introduce our panelists. The questions today are public, not private, but your last name will not be shared. So please feel free to ask any questions. We're going to have a Q&A after hearing from each panelist. So you can do this on the right side of your screen. The webinar is recorded. It's going to be available on demand after the fact. And the slides are also available for you to download. We'll be sharing those after the webinar as well. Again, nice to see you guys. My name is Maddie Bullock. I do all the digital events here at Weave. If you want to reach out to me after the webinar, you can do so on Twitter. And then I want to run through really quickly kind of the reason that we decided to have this discussion today. We was able to do a study we were able to do an independent study with different healthcare leaders and their patients, and we were able to find kind of what is the new norm right now and how are people maintaining that communication. If you can see here on this slide, it says that most healthcare practices say they could provide a better experience if they could improve their client contact rate. But then if you see the stats below, it's also a little bit fuzzy and unsure, and we're going to talk about that today, how to improve that contact rate, how to communicate. So we're going to go through, I'm going to introduce you to these two, and then they're going to give us the number one thing they want us to know, and then we'll have a live Q&A. Again, hi from Virginia, Nevada, Massachusetts. Holy cow, we have so many people here. This is so exciting. Again, please send in any questions that you have throughout the webinar. So Dr. Baliwas, can you say hi to everyone and give us a little spiel about you?
How's it going? My name's Brian Baliwas. I'm a general dentist in San Francisco. I graduated in dental school in 2014. I still want to call myself a new grad, but I think I'm getting a little older and that title is slowly slipping away from me. It's weird. But yeah, I've used certain apps, different social media platforms to help grow a practice in a pretty busy city. And so I guess today I'll be sharing a couple strategies about communication and using those.
Yeah, can you tell us really quickly how many followers you are up to now?
Oh gosh, I think it's like 32,000.
It's insane.
On Instagram.
Organic following, people. This is crazy. Oh, and tell everyone where you're logging in from, Dr. Baliwas.
Oh, you mean like where I am right now?
Yeah.
I'm at the office. It's actually, I'm supposed to go travel for another lecture. So I wasn't supposed to work today, but I have an emergency at 9:30, so in an hour and a half.
Busy man. And you're calling us from San Fran, right?
Yes, from a little smoky right now, but typically very smoky San Francisco.
So crazy. I'm so glad that that's starting to clear up. Thanks. We're so happy to have you here. John Mark, do you want to give us a little info about you and say hi?
Yeah. So my name's John Mark Sable. I'm a product marketing manager here at Weave. I've been with Weave for almost about a year now. And I'll be presenting hopefully a bit of a different way of thinking about effective communication that maybe will get you thinking kind of a little bit differently than the ways that that you've done that in the past. So
cool. Thank you so much. All right, Dr. Baliwas, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh man, me already, huh?
Here we go.
Let's just jump right in.
You're jumping right.
Well, first off, thanks for having me as a guest on this webinar series. I was asked to share a few strategies and how we maintain communication in our dental office. And I always find it fun sharing ideas with friends and colleagues and whatnot. So I totally agree to come on here and chat with you guys. There's no shortage in dental technology these days that helps us improve communication, increase our office potential. And so I just thought I'd share my thoughts on a few simple and easy to implement apps, tools, programs, software, etc., that I use to just connect with patients. And so our first step in auditing an office's communication strategies is figuring out who the heck we're talking to. So what might work for me in a major city like San Francisco might not work for someone who works in a rural town in the Midwest. Just my building that I'm in right now, I'm at 490 Post. There's about 70 dentists in the building on 17 floors. And then I have a second office 2 blocks away at 450 Sutter Street. And in that building, there's 145 dentists on 26 floors. And so again, you know, we're going to have to take my ideas in this webinar with a grain of salt. Instead of trying to implement exactly some of the things I talk about, maybe you can just try and take a step back and utilize similar strategies given what works in your areas. So, oh, hold on, let's click there. This is kind of who I'm dealing with in my area. I work in a pretty big tech city. My communication means are going to be mainly digital, mainly paperless. And so again, you've got to audit where you practice, who's around you, what businesses are around you, and then cater to those people. Looking at my opening slide, you know, you've got email on there, Facebook, there's texting, phones, obviously, we got some social media pages. And then obviously right now we're virtual on a conference here, and that's kind of turning into the new normal, as they say. But you know, you've got to audit if this is what you're working with. Maybe you guys are throwing up smoke signals and homing pigeons. You know, what are people in your area using to communicate? And I think for me here in San Francisco, and I think this can be applied to most places now, it's really starting to grow. What holds the attention of our society is actually smartphones. And so right now, you know, you're talking text, email, all these things that used to be done on a computer. Most people check that stuff on their phone now. And so I thought this statistic was kind of interesting. Right now, 25% of smartphone owners between 18 and 44, they don't know the last time they didn't have their phone next to them. So right now, there's over 100 people in this webinar. Look around. Is your phone right next to you? Can you reach your phone? Are you holding your phone?
Yeah.
It's kind of scary. We live and die by this smartphone. And so right now, if that's where your potential patients or your current patients, if that's where their attention is, you're going to have to find a way to communicate with them through that tool. So obviously Weave invited me here. I can't talk about communication and not bring up Weave. I use them to text and email. I think we'll be talking about that a little later in this webinar. But again, using platforms that are mobile is key. For me, however, I've used social media quite a bit. So when I started off in 2014 in San Francisco, I had a whopping 0 patients. I built a practice within another practice and had to find my own way of growing. I wasn't a true associate by definition. I wasn't given work to be done. And so I had to get creative with that. This is our social media page for our office over at 450 Sutter Street. You'll notice there's only 300 followers. A lot of people focus on that. It's really not about followers. It's about what you post and the interactions that are on there. So on our page, post a lot of our dental work, fundraisers that we attend. We post about our staff, activities we do. And then, you know, what happens is patients see these things and it's a call to action to reach out. And I guess my message here this isn't a social media lecture, it's a communications lecture. It's what happens when these patients actually reach out to you via these platforms. So when somebody slides into your DMs and says, hey, I'm interested in getting my smile done with veneers, who is running your page to respond to them? You know, if you're paying a company a couple $100 to post for you and run your social media page, I think you're missing out on a great opportunity to actually have somebody from your office. You know, for me, I'm the doctor. I enjoy doing this. I would say that most doctors don't have the time, some don't have the interest to actually run their own page. This person responding needs to be somebody at your office, needs to be personalized. Here I responded, hi, I sent you an email back. Did you get it? What's your office number? I'll have the office call you to book a consult. But if they're asking questions, specifics, you've got to be quick to respond in a meaningful way. Can you possibly save my smile? Why are you unhappy with it? I have 3 horrible cavities. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry to hear about your teeth. Again, you can't get away from personal connections. There's a lot of technology in this world, but you have to still be a human using that technology. Even through Yelp, a lot of people, here in San Francisco, Yelp's a big thing. In your area, you might have review sites. Who's responding to not just the reviews, if you choose to respond to reviews, but sometimes Yelp especially has a messaging system. If somebody reaches out there and says, hey, are you in network with Delta PPO? Who's answering that? Is it an automated thing? So again, my big thing is I respond to these personally, not because I have nothing better to do, but I'm truly interested in this. I'm somebody who built a practice. I grew to over 1,000 patients in under, I think, 3 years. It was a pretty quick growth for my practice, and a lot of that I can attribute to the social media platforms that I used, a lot of these online sites, and also just maintaining that human connection through those apps. Virtual meetings is another, way that you can really connect with your patients using technology. These days, there are programs down in the lower right. There's Smile Virtual Consult. If you look at Brian Harris down in Arizona, he's doing great things, really connecting people. And especially now with COVID, these virtual meetings tend to be a little bit more valued. Some people are still kind of weary about going into the dentist, but if you don't want to pay for that program, it is nice having something structured. But something as simple as FaceTime there, or even a Zoom conference. I know I reach out to my patients all the time. I use it for initial consults, meeting with new patients, treatment planning. We do Invisalign follow-up appointments, post-op checks. Sometimes if somebody's having a minor emergency, it's nice to be able to say, hey, let me send you a Zoom link real quick. Let's talk face-to-face before we can get you in. Again, what you're trying to do is get human connection there, whether it be with a doctor or one of your assistants, somebody from the office that they can connect with. That's really important. I'm going to end with this thought on automation. There's a lot of automated responses that you can get now. I know when I log into some websites, all of a sudden a little chat pops up in the corner and says, hey, how can I help you? What's going on? And I love messing with those things. I go, hey, I'm just, I'll log onto a doctor page and I'll go, hey, I'm just wondering, where did Dr. Jones go to med school? Or where did Dr. Jones go to dental school? And most of the time, those people can't answer me. Or what they do is they go, oh, hold on 1 second while I do this. Same thing with some of the canned responses when you pay for somebody to manage your social media page. Somebody reaches out, hey, I'm really interested in straightening my teeth. Do you guys do Invisalign? And then they get a response that says, oh, sure. Give us 1 second while we, have you reach out to the office at this number. It's just not personalized. The worst is the automatic comments and the automatic messages that get sent out, the automatic likes. Again, none of it's organic, and people see right through it. This quote here, the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it's taken place. My biggest issue with the current automated response technology is that it's no substitute for true communication. So in the end, it's about human to human connection. I won't say it's impossible, because right now with AI and machine learning, this technology is getting really smart. I know with Sephora, for example, some of their machine learning and responses to chat, especially through Facebook Live, I mean, they're really smart. They'll go through your purchase history, say, oh my gosh, they'll look up your name. So if you comment out, they'll say, Oh, hi, Brian. Thanks for reaching out. So now there is that little bit of human, connection there, but in my mind, it's still not there. And so I think a solid strategy is to find what platforms, what media content, what are your patients utilizing right now in your area, and then find a way to personally interact and connect with them through those channels. And so that's all I got. I think you just got to keep it personal, trust the technology, and then focus in on the technology that your demographic is using.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think you bring up really good points, and we actually have a couple of questions already coming in about it. So we'll answer those when we get to the Q&A section. But it is very interesting to think about when you have social media inquiries, who's going to own this? So is it you, the doctor? Do you actually have time for that? Or is it, do you have someone in your office and that is part of, the ownership of the task that they have?
Yeah.
Yeah, which, I mean, it changes, but I'm guessing that you are over most of your social media. Is that right, Dr. Bell?
I am, but again, it's because I enjoy it. It's kind of fun. And not only that, but my social media page has changed a little bit. It's been more, I've been connecting with more doctors rather than potential patients. And so, again, you just have to find somebody. I mean, I've got ideas in how you can find somebody at the office, and a really good one is if you live near a university or a college and they have a pre-dental society, a place where pre-dental students kind of, maybe a pre-dental club, just throw out an ad and say, hey, we're looking for an intern.
That's a great idea.
Those guys are looking for they're looking for shadowing and observation opportunities, right? And so if you can actually pay them, they can not only help with your social media stuff, but sometimes it's great. We have interns that help with sterilization, they help with chairside assisting, they help with the front, they help with little tasks throughout the office that help us get through the day. I think it's wonderful help, and they're employees who really want to be here. I mean, this is what they're interested in, and they're sponges. They just take it all in.
That's an incredible suggestion. That's great. Thank you. And again, more questions coming in. I'm stoked about them. We are going to get to them. We are going to turn the time over now to John Mark. John Mark, take it away.
Hello. So again, I'm John Mark Sable. I'm a product marketing manager here at Weave. So in the next 10 minutes or so, what I want to do is really kind of complement all the awesome insight that Dr. Baliwas just shared and introduce you to maybe a new way of thinking about communication that will make patient communication in your practice a little more effective. Now, you might be wondering, okay, now, wait a minute. What do we mean by effective, right? So, like, why won't just our regular old ways of communication cut it? And Dr. Baliwas, I think, highlighted a ton of these, right? But I think another way of sort of answering this question is actually kind of with the opposite. So what isn't effective communication? And I think this is a really good example. So the stat that you see on screen right now is from a research study that we did at Weave. And you can see that that in a typical practice, they're going to voicemail 34% of the time. That's a huge drain on efficiency, on, motivation, honestly. And you're starting to kind of enter the realm of phone tag hell at that point. So if we want to sort of put forward kind of a working definition of what effective means, I think it should be something a little like this. So effective communication, one, gets to the people it needs to get to, and two, if needed, it gets them to take some sort of action. So this is where I'd like to introduce the sort of concept of the patient communication pyramid. Now you can kind of think of this as like a tool or a ladder or a funnel, I guess you might say, to decide what sorts of communication should go to who as well as how. And you'll see that these things sort of build on each other. Now, the first level here is the communication type. So when you think about the sorts of communication that you're probably doing in your practice on a regular basis, they probably fall into one of three buckets. So the first is coordination, the second is updates, and the third is more marketing. Now, the difference between all these three is that they really have kind of a different purpose or job that they need to accomplish. Now, when it comes to coordination communication, with this, the purpose here is really to ensure that something that you previously agreed upon actually happens. So they've already scheduled an appointment. And so this includes things like appointment reminders and appointment confirmation, rescheduling. So someone calls in, they're already on the schedule for Tuesday at 3. They say, sorry, that time isn't going to work for me anymore. Can we reschedule? That's falling into that coordination sort of bucket. Now, the purpose of updates communication is a little different. So this is really to inform customers and patients about things that will impact their ability to receive services. So things like changes to your office hours or new ways to receive services, like if you're rolling out some sort of telehealth initiative. Now, marketing, this one hopefully is a little bit straightforward. So the purpose of marketing communication is, of course, to generate new business, new opportunities for production from current active, inactive, and new customers. So this includes things like recall, reminders to use FSA benefits at the end of the year, and any sort of holiday specials or discounts that your practice typically uses. Now, once you understand what you're communicating and why, that's when I think we need to layer in who. Because really, we want to control for a situation like this. Now, I know many practices needed to temporarily close down during COVID. And with that, it's really important to make sure that that information, especially information about who to contact and how to contact you if they need to receive emergency service, it's really important that that information does not get ignored. So again, effective communication is about getting the right information in front of the right people at the right time. Now, of course, your patients probably don't look exactly like these two alpacas unless you're a large animal vet, but we don't want to fall into the trap of just using one communication medium if we're dealing with people that prefer to get their updates in different ways. So this kind of leads into the second level of this patient communication pyramid, which is the persona. Now, basically, a patient persona is this. It is a fleshed out description of a certain type of patient based on their needs in your practice, what makes them schedule appointments, as well as kind of what keeps them coming back. Because if you think about everyone in your patient base, chances are you'll probably notice a pattern in who you typically see, sort of like Dr. Baliwas was talking about. And I just want to give a couple examples here, and I'm not going to sort of read these, but I think they illustrate the idea pretty nicely. Because, for example, a parent who has 2 younger children is typically going to have much different needs, both in terms of the care they require and how they prefer to communicate than a college student or someone who recently retired. Now, okay, so if the word stereotype just kind of came to mind, I don't think that's exactly the right word, but I think it's close. So the big idea here and the big difference is that with a patient persona, we're trying to understand the things that actually make a difference in how they choose to make decisions around what practices they're going to patronize. So you don't need to know their favorite brand of shoe, or if they prefer chocolate or vanilla, or if they like to golf. What's important here is to focus on the 3 to 5 things that really set them apart as patients, not as people generally. Now, you might be wondering if any specific patient is going to match this exactly. I mean, maybe, but also maybe not. I mean, really, these are more general rules of thumb, and you'll sort of see how we can leverage them in just a minute. Now, another question that may have come to mind is, well, okay, that's great. How the heck do I even make these things? And honestly, I think it's more straightforward than you might think. So the first step that I would recommend is really just sitting down with your staff and talking about the sorts of patients that they're most commonly interacting with. What do they care about? What do they complain about? How do you usually reach them to get them on your schedule? Does one way usually work better than another way? These sorts of questions, I think, can be very illuminating to go through with your staff, and it can actually be a pretty fun exercise for your office, as well as really helping them build kind of an empathy for the people they're working with on a daily basis. Now, after that, I would say, don't forget to ask your patients too. So usually they'll be more than happy to tell you about how they prefer to coordinate and get updates or learn about specials, but also why they keep showing up to your practice instead of going somewhere else. And occasionally you might actually learn something you didn't know about why people love your practice instead of anywhere else in the area. Now, what you'll probably uncover in an exercise like this is that different types of patients or different personas prefer to receive communication in different ways. And this is where we sort of transition to the final level of this kind of pyramid structure, which is the communication medium. So these are the ways of communicating that you really know and love, from calling to texting to email. And I think Dr. Baliwas sort of opened up a brand new world in terms of maybe mediums that we may have viewed as previously a little unconventional or unexpected. And oftentimes those are some of the best places to start because it's where people are more likely to pay attention. They're not being bombarded by everyone else who's trying to get their business. And this is why we cared about understanding each patient persona's communication preferences for their different types of communication. So, for example, in that research survey I mentioned before, practices said that it was twice as difficult to reach clients under the age of 35 with a phone call. And this sort of ties nicely with this second stat, which is that only 18% thought they were using texting to its full potential. So this is a situation where the communication type and persona are going to impact what medium you choose to deliver that communication. All right, so maybe this was a little bit abstract. So I want to just give 2 very quick examples for how this actually works in action. And you'll see this is actually really straightforward. This isn't rocket science by any stretch of the imagination. And this is the pyramid applied to coordination. So in this case, an appointment confirmation. So say we know we're trying to confirm an appointment with our parent persona. So looking at the ways we know she prefers to coordinate, we simply send her a text to confirm her appointment. Pretty straightforward. Now, let's sort of do the same thing for our recently retired individual's persona. We're trying to confirm his appointment. We see that he prefers to coordinate either over the phone or by email. So we have a busy practice. Let's try sending him an email first, and if he does not reply to that, we can try to confirm his appointment with a phone call. All right, so I want to wrap up with maybe a bit of a different way of thinking about what's going on here. And this may also be a little bit easier to remember and actually implement as well, Because really what's happening here is that we're asking 3 or 4 different questions in a specific order. So the first question is what? So what type of communication are we trying to send? Are we trying to drum up new business, new production? Are we coordinating or are we coordinating a appointment that we've already scheduled? Are we delivering an update? Things like that. Then we ask, all right, so who are we sending this to? How do they prefer to get this sort of communication? And then those 2 things sort of add up nicely into the how of how you actually choose to deliver that communication to them. So that's really the patient communication pyramid in a nutshell. And I think that especially nowadays when, like Dr. Baliwas said, folks are kind of bombarded with information sort of coming from all over the place. It will help you put the right messages in front of the people who need to see them the most. And this is where I need to spotlight Weave for a second, because Weave, for one, is my employer, but Weave is also basically built with this in mind. So it sort of weaves all communications into one platform, from email to text to fax to phones. And with more of these different mediums coming soon as well, I will sort of add and tease that, to help businesses communicate better, more effectively, and also usually in a lot less time. And one last thing. So speaking of email, we're hosting a 3-part email marketing webinar series for practices starting in November. So from my perspective, email is really one of the most powerful tools you have, especially in terms of marketing communication. And I think that if you're actively working on growing your business, growing your practice, there's a lot to learn there. But with that, I will pass it back to Maddie, who will be handling our Q&A.
John Mark, thanks so much. And actually, you're not totally off the hook yet. I'm curious, do you see different mediums of communication being better for different communication types?
Yeah, so one, yes, but I also think that like Dr. Baliwas said, it really makes a difference who is in your patient base. So that's all going to feed into the decision around what sort of communication is ultimately going to be used. But I also sort of would want to add to that I think that each medium also has its strengths. So let's look at like texting, for example. Like there's a pretty common sort of statistic around texting in marketing circles that says that 98% of texts are read in the first 2 minutes, which is super compelling, right?
Wow.
Especially in the world of like email, where you don't know if you're getting marked as spam. And I think that makes that a very impactful medium, but you should also remember that maybe this means we need to be a little more intentional in how we're using it. Because it's also true that 98% of people will pay attention to you if you punch them in the face, but that doesn't make it a good medium for marketing. And I think that a lot of folks still potentially find sort of very broad stroke text message marketing a little bit invasive. And if you're sort of using all your chances to communicate with people through text with just very broad strokes marketing, we might wonder if that's sort of hurting your ability to use it to confirm appointments or to send patients sort of more personalized recall reminders. So yeah, I think there's definitely a balance.
John Mark, at our practice, part of our new patient paperwork is actually asking what people's preferred method of communication is.
Perfect.
And you would be shocked. I mean, we have some patients who are in their 80s and 90s and they want texts. That's what they do. They love texting. And then we have some patients who are in their 20s and they want a little card that they can stick on their fridge. And so you just have to ask, I think. And then in terms of your communication, you brought up some awesome points, because sometimes you kind of have to also play it by ear. We recently had a patient whose family member passed away. I'm not going to send them a text message and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry for your loss. That's when you kick it old school and you go get a sympathy card and you
Totally.
pull out a pen and you write, all of our thank you notes at the office are still handwritten by the docs. I think that goes a long way. And so you kind of have to get used to the nuances of what communication mediums to use.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so actually there were some questions in the chat, and we had some really great crowdsourced answers, which were awesome. But Dr. Balios, I'm curious if you could speak to your responses to social media inquiries. And there was also a question, how do you respond on Yelp without breaking a HIPAA rule?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. And you can, again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not some HIPAA officer, but I would, and I have done this, call the HIPAA, the department in, go to HIPAA.gov, I think is what it is, and speak to somebody about some of this stuff. HIPAA is all about not disclosing a person's identity, their personal information, or their health information. Okay, so other than that, if somebody walks into your office and there's somebody in the reception area, and yes, you're not going to say, oh my God, Mrs. Jones, you're here for your crown, and all of a sudden that person in the waiting room hears that would be violating HIPAA. Now, if they come in and they go, oh, I'm here for my appointment, and you go, oh, well, somebody's in the waiting room, I can't actually say whether or not this person is a patient because I don't want to, that doesn't make sense. They're already in the office. It's very clear that they are a patient, right? Or that you're bringing them back. You do what you can to kind of prevent to protect their privacy. This all came about because there was a company that was trying to sell us on encrypted email. And one of our offices does use encrypted email for almost all email. But again, with HIPAA, let's say you had somebody who had a treatment plan and they wanted you to express or tell them what their treatment plan is by yelling it out the window. That's what the patient wanted. Well, now they've allowed you to do that, knowing that, hey, this could violate, like somebody might hear that. So, if you actually just say, hey, we use encrypted email, it's just as secure as, your Gmail account. Is it okay if we use that, or would you like us to use an encrypted email? You might clarify what that means, and if they agree to it and you confirm that the email is actually correct, hey, before I send you this information, I just want to confirm, can you confirm the last 4 of your social or last 4 of your phone number just to make sure it's you? Sure, it's this. I think you've gone above and beyond to protect their privacy. So now going to these reviews, if somebody leaves you a review, don't say, well, you shouldn't have, I told you you needed an extraction, and, just avoid all that. I think Chris, if you scroll up in the comments, left a great one. It's just, hey, we value your opinions and we'd like to reach out to you. We'll have somebody reach out to you to kind of solve this, and just leave it at that. No one's looking for perfect when they look at these reviews. They're not looking for, oh my gosh, like this person has a 1-star. Actually, if you ever catch one of my social media lectures, you'll hear about my, I don't want to say strategy, but sometimes I welcome these bad reviews and I actually ask for them, because if they're valid and it actually happened, then one, it's a learning opportunity for me in my office. Or if it's valid and I kind of agree with them, like one time I got a bad review from somebody who we didn't see them because they showed up too late for an appointment. And they said that. I showed up late to an appointment and they didn't see me. Perfect. Write that, because I want everybody to read that. If you're late to your appointment, I'm not seeing you. So I don't know. It's just a way of being honest on there.
No, I think that's great. There's also, so there was a question just now, what type of social media posts do you get the most attraction from? I know that from the Weave side of things, because I also work in public relations with Weave, we surprisingly get a lot of engagement from our Facebook page. And then, it goes from Facebook to then LinkedIn to then Instagram, then Twitter. Do you know what works the best for you, Dr.
I think it's about asking your patients, and knowing who your patients are. Here in San Francisco, I use a ton of Instagram. I'll support some of my younger patients who have a TikTok. We'll give them a follow. Facebook is still somewhat relevant, but maybe you're practicing out in Montana, and maybe the best thing isn't maybe social media. Maybe it's your office doc joining a forum on hunting and fishing and getting to know a few people on there, and maybe paying for some advertisement on there. I don't know. Again, it comes down to who your patients are and what their demographic is. If you live next to a retirement home and that you talk to them and they go, yeah, we always get the Times and everybody loves reading this newspaper. Well, maybe it makes sense to reach out via newspaper. I think I reverse engineer things. Just because something's hot and popular, it doesn't mean it's going to work in your area. I think some of these social media things are free. I think it's worth a shot. What do you have to lose? And if it works, it works. If not, you have a social media page. Who cares? So that's my little long-winded answer for that.
No, thank you. Thank you very much. John Mark, we also had a question about automation versus personalization when it comes to actually connecting with a customer. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, it depends on the context, right? So I think there's quite a bit that can be done through automation, especially if you are in a business like dentistry where there's a lot of repeat business. And also, when it comes to automation, it's sort of like effective, right? It sort of means different things to different people. So, for example, you might set up an email campaign to go out at different times because they don't get that email right when you hit send. Is that automation? But I think that to sort of take a step back, there's a time and a place for both, right? And I think that most automation, quote unquote, so for example, something that Weave, in my opinion, does really well is automate recall reminders and appointment confirmations by sending patients a quick text from your office number. Now, you're personalizing that in a couple ways, right? Because one, it's coming from your office number, so it's not some random number that they'll mark as spam. But also, with any sort of automation like that, what will typically happen is that there will be a way to automatically input specific types of relevant information, like their name and their appointment time. So there's a lot that can be done there. I think especially when it comes to people that are looking and need sort of a nudge to get back on your schedule. But I also think Dr. Baliwas has a great point when it comes to drumming up, or when it comes to sort of engaging, especially inbound inquiries. I don't think that automation is really has a phenomenal place there at this point.
Hopefully people didn't think that I'm like anti-automation of everything, because I am a Weave user. That's how I got here, being invited to this. But I also, we send out text reminders for appointments and recall reminders. I look at it like this, like how personalized does that message need to be? Then you should kind of not be as automated. It's kind of like this, or how complex a situation is, then it can't be as automated. So think about when you go to the airport and you're checking in a bag. Like you have a simple suitcase, perfect. You go to that little kiosk, it prints out a little tag, you stick it on there, you stick it on the bag. Now, if you're flying with, skis or golf clubs or something a little bit more complex, then sometimes it's a little bit more difficult to go through that automation. You have to kind of speak to someone. And then if you're traveling with a firearm, then the automation isn't even, you're not even allowed to do that. You actually have to go in and they have to inspect it and make sure it's locked up the same way. So same thing with your office. If you're just confirming an appointment that's 2 weeks out for a cleaning, awesome, automated. So a filling, a crown, awesome, automated. All of a sudden you're confirming an appointment where they are coordinating with an orthodontist because they have to get their wires off. And then after you're cleaning, they're doing this, and that. Sometimes a phone call is a little more helpful to clarify that stuff. So definitely use the technology, but you just have to audit what you're actually using it for and how effective it is.
Love that. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's all about the situation. Totally.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we actually had another question on the side asking, so we have an accounting business owner that is using Weave and was curious about secure communications within Weave. I know that the email portion of Weave works through your office's email server, so we can connect to your email provider. So it depends on how your email office is set up as far as those communications. But John Mark, can you speak to other features within Weave and the security that they offer for all business owners actually, but this person in particular is an accounting professional who may not have the dental HIPAA constraints?
Yeah, so to be honest, this is not information I have access to off the top of my head, unfortunately. I do know that, so Weave has this very big internal initiative that's been going on for the past couple of years to really bring the security of our platform kind of like to the highest tier. What I think I'll do actually is I'll reach out to a person who would know. And Maddie, can you send me that person's contact information and I can follow up?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely can. We had another question, Dr. Baliwas. I'm going to send this one to you. Pamela asked, what's an appropriate way to promote your Facebook in the office? She says, we have a lot of older patients that may not take the time to find us on social media. Should you put a flyer on the wall, attach some info to their receipt?
You mean how to actually spread that Facebook to patients and know that you have it?
I think so. I think that's the question.
So Facebook's an interesting, it's a beast when it comes to ads, because if you ever run Facebook ads, it's not as simple as, okay, well, here's what you want to say and just post it. It can be highly specific, down to the area, to age, profession, interests. It's crazy. And if you are on your computer right now, or you know what the internet is, you know that if I talk about some brand new Vokey, some Vokey wedges right now, I really want Vokey wedges. I really need a new 56-degree sand wedge. I guarantee when I get on my phone or open up a browser, all of a sudden, I'm going to start seeing golf club ads on the little side there. And so I think with Facebook specifically, you can get really specific with that. And you might find out that these patients can actually see your stuff and run into your things when they're just chatting with their grandchildren on Facebook, or they're checking up on their daughters, whatever. You just kind of want to pop up organically. I'm not really about kind of forcing it on people like, hey, by the way, we have a Facebook, because if you're doing that, then why not just cut out the middleman and just say, hey, we have a dental practice. Why don't you come on in for this? Yeah, so I would definitely, there's some really good resources on YouTube. If you look up how to maximize your Facebook ads, there's some really good books on it too. that's a whole another series of webinars in terms of how to get the most out of your Facebook ads. Did we lose Maddie? Is she frozen?
I think she is.
Well, while she's frozen, somebody just asked, are Google reviews considered public once they're posted? Or no, do you need consent for posting people's Google reviews? And I think Maddie answered that. I mean, once they're public, I'm pretty sure it's fine. And if somebody's leaving you a good review, I don't think they'd have any issues with you sharing it. I mean, they shared it, so why not?
Totally.
Maddie just wrote, "Oh no." She is frozen now.
All right. So it looks like Lynette asked about payment options. Do you mean ways in which patients can sort of pay their outstanding balances, or ways in which you might pay for or purchase Weave, I guess?
Can you hear me now? Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So what question were you just getting to? Payment options?
Okay.
Yeah, but they're clarifying, is it payment options in terms of paying for Weave, or payment options in terms of taking payment options?
Yeah.
Weave
payments.
I can speak to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Weave offers a couple different kind of solutions for payments. So first is we offer terminals, so your typical sort of payment processing, and all of that is kind of within Weave as well. So it's in the same place as the rest of your communications and faxes and basically anything else that Weave does. But something that has been sort of unintentionally incredibly useful, particularly during COVID, is a feature called text to pay. And basically what that is a sort of text template that you can just click a patient's name who has an outstanding balance, and it will send them a text message with a link that they can then click on to pay their outstanding balance. And I know some practices have actually used that for all of or most of their payment processing now, with folks trying to sort of minimize their interaction with things that a lot of people are touching on a daily basis.
Right, and then another question following up on that: with the payment terminals, do you offer portable ones? Oh, actually, I can answer this. So we have contactless payment, but our payment terminals are not portable. They have a cord on them. Right? I know that because I helped film the commercial for it. And we had to redo a couple of scenes because we didn't have the cord on the terminal, and we realized that was an inaccurate display of the product. Yeah.
It sounds like that might be asking about those kind of like things you can plug into your mobile phone. That's not something that that we send out right now.
Currently no. Yeah, so we actually had this question twice from Wendy, and I'm going to ask this to you, Dr. Baliwas. Do you suggest charging the ADA teledentistry code for virtual meetings with patients?
You know, we've been putting in that code just to keep track. I think it's important. I mean, if somebody came to your office just for an office visit and wanted to ask you a question, you would say, hey, so-and-so saw me on this day, and I did this, and we talked about this, and you would take notes. And so I think that some of these are considered appointments. If you have a conversation with somebody about health information at a given time, I want record of that. I want to say, you know, like, hey, this happened on this date, and this is what we talked about. So we do use the code. Do we charge for it? This is something we've always kind of gone back and forth on. I don't think we have anything set in stone. There are certain consults that we will charge for. And then there's certain things that we don't, in terms of, like if I'm doing an Invisalign follow-up, where I'm just checking. I mean, I don't charge for that at my office. They've already paid for it with their treatment. So I don't see why I would just charge it there too. Just as a quick disclosure, I have a fee-for-service office. And so I'm also not someone who relies on coding as much as I can to get the biggest reimbursement from insurance because of fees. So take that with a grain of salt.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for that response. I know that you have an emergency patient to get to.
I do.
And we are also coming up on 55 minutes in the webinar. We have had so many great questions, so many wonderful things going on in the chat. I think people are making friends, getting emails from each other. It's amazing. Any last words from either of you, John Mark or Dr. Baliwas?
If you guys need anything, you can reach out to me. I respond on Instagram pretty quickly. So if you shoot me a DM, if you need help with a page or need ideas, I'm around.
Yeah, that's actually true, because last year I tried to contact you and I had the best hit rate on Instagram. He's not lying, guys. Go follow him. John Mark, thanks for being here. Any last words from you?
Go follow Dr. Baliwas on Instagram.
Thanks.
Yeah, guys. Well, thank you again so much. As a reminder, this is recorded. It will be sent to you either today or in the next couple of days. We're also going to have it on our Weave webinar section of our website, also on Weave's YouTube channel. And again, thank you all so much for being here. This was super insightful and just way more than I expected, so I really appreciate it. And everyone, thanks for being here.
Hi.
Hey, have a great
Thanks, guys.
See ya.